Chapter 22:34. He took a sip of wine and said, "Tell her that I've left, and tell her that if there's a chance next time, I'll visit the Heavenly Pill building again." The shopkeeper outside responded, "Yes." On the second floor, the waiter was carrying 2 jars of wine and placing them on the table. He said, "Miss, please keep these 2 jars of wine." Then, he left. Fengjiu waved his hand and put the 2 jars of wine into his space. Not long after, the shopkeeper walked over. "Miss, I'm really sorry. My master just left. He said that if there's a chance next time, he'll visit you again." Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed. He knows about the Heavenly Pill building. Who is this person? Could it be that he went to the Heavenly Pill building to buy medicinal pills and met me? In that case, let's settle the bill, she said to the shopkeeper, indicating that he should pay for their food. Miss, my master has instructed me to treat you to this meal." Hearing this, Fengjiu laughed. "But I don't even know who your master is, and I'm asking him to treat me. This is a bit unreasonable. Besides, he's already given me 2 jars of wine. I can't save money on this meal." At this time, Duanyi stood up, took out a heavy money bag, and put it on the table. "This is the money for the meal." He came to Fengjiu's side and said, "Let's go." "Okay." She nodded slightly and left with him. When Lu Xian and Duanyi saw this, they hurriedly followed. When they came outside, Lu Xian glanced at Duanyi and asked Fengjiu, "Ghost Doctor, why don't I show you around? There are a few places in Luha City that have good scenery." "Okay. Anyway, we have nothing to do." Fengjiu agreed with a smile. He looked at the tea house opposite and said to them, "Wait for me." As he spoke, he walked toward the tea house and told the shopkeeper that he didn't have to vacate the room. Seeing Fengjiu leave, Lu Xian looked at Duanyi beside her. She thought for a moment and asked, "Martial Uncle Duan, where are you going? Did Martial Uncle Duan come out to train?" Duanyi glanced at her and asked instead of answering, "Is it inappropriate for us to be guests at your residence like this?" No, she said hurriedly. "But why did I hear that Luha City hasn't been very peaceful recently? The various clans and the city lord's mansion are on guard. Will it really not bring you any trouble if I visit your mansion at this time?" Hearing this, Lu Xian was stunned for a moment. Martial Uncle Duan knows about this. Seeing that he was looking at her, she hurriedly said, "It's like this, because many female cultivators have died in the past few days, my father has increased the number of guards in the city, but until now, they still haven't caught that person. Every family has their own children, so naturally, there will be martial law. However, this won't affect Martial Uncle Duan and Ghost Doctor from coming to my house as guests. I think that my father will definitely be very happy that you guys can come. If that's the case, I'll have to trouble you to show us around today." Fengjiu walked over and said with a smile, "Sure." Lu Xian and Ruanru responded with happy smiles. Duanyi, on the other hand, glanced at Fengjiu. He clearly said that he didn't rest much last night and would find a place to rest well today, but now he wanted to go shopping. Could it be that he had some thoughts again? Chapter 22:35. Thinking of this, he sighed in his heart and shook his head secretly. She was really reckless. It wasn't like she didn't know that her spiritual power was sealed and she could only use Xian energy. All her contracted beasts were left in the Heavenly Pill building. If she encountered a devil cultivator who was stronger than her, what should she do? Other cultivators who had reached her level of cultivation were all otherworldly and didn't meddle in other people's business. She, on the other hand, liked to meddle in other people's business. Lu Xian and Ruanru took the 2 of them to play around in the city. Lu Xian and Ruanru didn't have Fengjiu's plan. They only thought that she had come to Luha City in the future and was quite interested in this place, so she played for most of the day. Duanyi, who knew Fingzhou's plan, paid attention along the way to see if there was anyone special. It wasn't until afternoon that they went to the city lord's mansion. Marshal Uncle Duan, Ghost Doctor, the city lord's mansion is right in front of us, Lu Xian said as she held Wanru's hand and walked. Fengzhou and Duan Yi looked ahead and saw cultivators entering the city lord's mansion one after another. So, Fengzhou asked, are those people from your mansion? Lu Xian shook her head and said, no, it's because a devil cultivator appeared in this city. My father posted a notice and asked all the experts in the city to help catch that devil cultivator. These people should be here for that devil cultivator. Oh. Your father posted a notice. She looked at her curiously and asked, what's your father's cultivation level? How could he not even deal with a devil cultivator? Since he was the city lord, his cultivation level should not be low. My father is a cultivator at the middle stage of the fairy realm. However, he has a lot of things to deal with. That devil cultivator is committing crimes everywhere in the city. My father can't deal with it alone, so he asked for help from all the experts. Fengzhou nodded. The strength of a city lord was almost at the fairy realm. Many patriarchs of the clans here were stuck at this level and couldn't advance any further. They followed Lu Xian inside. Once inside, they walked for a while and saw many people standing in the courtyard talking about the devil cultivator and some of their own things. Because there were many people in the courtyard, Lu Xian said, Marshal Uncle Duan, let's go over there. There's no one on the path over there. I'll take you guys to rest first, then I'll talk to my father. The few of them were just about to walk towards the small path when suddenly, one of the middle-aged cultivators who were talking around inadvertently glanced over and saw the baby-faced Duan Yi, and his face couldn't help but overflow with pleasant surprise. Fellow Immortal Duan. Fellow Immortal Duan. That person excitedly squeezed through the crowd and ran towards Duan Yi. When he arrived in front of him, he looked him up and down and said, it really is fellow Daoist Duan. I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. I didn't expect it to be you. The cultivator's voice was loud and clear. As soon as his voice rang out, everyone's attention was drawn over. At this moment, all of their gazes landed on the baby-faced Duan Yi. They were puzzled in their hearts. This youth didn't look very old, so why was that cultivator at the fairy realms so excited when he saw this youth? Thus, someone who knew that cultivator asked, fellow cultivator Hong, who is this little friend? That person looked at Duan Yi and asked. Chapter 22:36. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but gasp. This young man didn't look very old, but he was already at the peak of the fairy realm. They looked him up and down one by one, but found that his aura wasn't at the peak of the fairy realm. They couldn't help but look at Hong Shusher in confusion. You're not mistaken, are you? This young man doesn't look very old. He has the strength of the peak of the fairy realm. How could I be mistaken? He saved me last time. Hong Shusher said with a smile. He looked at Duan Yi and said, fellow Immortal Duan, do you still remember me? You even saved my life last time. Duan Yi listened to them talking one by one, especially in the end, they surrounded him and asked him questions. He couldn't help but frown slightly. He looked at Fengzhou beside him, and his frown deepened. Where's Fengzhou? Where did that woman go? You really can't judge a book by its cover. I really couldn't tell that fellow immortal is already at the peak of the fairy realm. The younger generation will surpass us in time. Yes, you really deserve to be a genius of the Cloud Jade Immortal Sect, one of the 4 major immortal sects. Your future is limitless. Fellow Immortal Duan is also here for the Devil Cultivator, right? Since fellow Immortal Duan is from the Cloud Jade Immortal Sect and happened to pass by here, you definitely won't sit back and do nothing. Yes, the Cloud Jade Immortal Sect is one of the 4 major immortal sects, and fellow Immortal Duan is so powerful. With you here, the devil cultivator will definitely be frightened and won't dare to come again. Listening to everyone's words, Duan frowned and said, Everyone, I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave first. He turned around to leave, but he didn't see Lu Xian. He saw Ru standing behind him, so he walked over. Where is she? He asked with a frown. Uncle Duan, Xian went to invite her father, Ru said quickly. Don't ask her. Duan Ye's face darkened. He glanced around, but didn't see Fingzhou. Seeing Duan Ye's face darken, she couldn't help but take a step back and said in a small voice, I don't know about the ghost doctor either. Just now, they were all squeezing over, so I also retreated to the side. When I came back to my senses, the ghost doctor's figure was already gone. Duan Yu was about to look for her when he heard Lu Xian's voice. Father, he's Martial Uncle Duan. Duan Yu turned around and saw Lu Xian walking over with large strides with her father. When he saw this, he knew that he couldn't leave, so he looked at Ru and said, Are you familiar with the city lord's estate? Seeing this, Ru said, Yes, I'm very close to Xian. I've been living in her house since I came back. Then go look for her and see where she went. He instructed. All right. She nodded in response, then turned to leave. Her heart was slightly surprised. Duan Martial Uncle really cared about the ghost doctor. Could it be that the ghost doctor was Duan Martial Uncle's relative? Until now, they still hadn't said what the ghost doctor's surname was. On the other side, Fingzhou was walking along the path, enjoying the scenery in the city lord's estate. The people there just now rushed up and pushed her away from Duan Yi. Seeing that Duan Yi was surrounded by many people talking to him, Lu Xian and Ru were also pushed aside, so she left first. Chapter 22:37. She raised her eyebrows and turned her body slightly to look. She saw that the man had one hand under his head and the other by his side. One leg was stretched out and the other was bent slightly. His posture was leisurely and contented as he rested with half-closed eyes. That person's appearance was outstanding. Under a pair of sword-like eyebrows was a pair of half-squinted eyes. Because the other party's eyes were half-squinted, she could not see the expression in his eyes clearly. However, that tall nose, thin lips, and sharp facial features combined to form a handsome, outstanding, and masculine face that was full of masculine charm. The strangest thing was that the man's temperament, which was neither good nor evil, was strangely familiar to her. However, she was very sure that she had never seen this person before. Why are you staring at me? A deep and magnetic voice with a hint of sleepiness was heard. At the same time, he opened his eyes and looked at Fingzhou. When he saw her, his eyes flashed and a trace of amazement appeared in his eyes. Then, he sat up from the rockery. Fengzhou could clearly see that this was the man's first time seeing her. Because when he looked at her just now, it was clear that most people would have the same amazement when seeing her for the first time. This man did not look any different from the people she had seen before. The man sat on the rockery and stared at Fengzhou for a while. Then, with a light leap, he jumped down from the rockery and walked step by step towards Fengzhou. With a charming smile on his face, he stared straight at her and asked, "Miss, may I know your name?" That expression, that action, that gaze, and the words he said made the corners of Fengzhou's mouth twitch involuntarily. She was speechless and looked away slightly, simply unable to look straight at him. Was this man trying to seduce her? Look at that gaze, it was comparable to that of a woman in a brothel. Especially when this person was a man. That kind of strangeness definitely refreshed her understanding of him. "Miss, could it be that you're shy?" Seeing Fengzhou avert his eyes, the man chuckled and said, "Speaking of which, I should have introduced myself first. My surname is Yi, and my name is Shiran. I'm 27 years old and still unmarried. How about you?" Before he could finish speaking, he saw the beautiful woman in red turn around and leave. Seeing this, his eyes flickered slightly, and the corners of his lips curled up with an imperceptible trace of loneliness. He immediately strode after her. "Miss, I haven't finished speaking. Miss, I fell in love with Miss at first sight. I, Shiran, believe that my appearance is outstanding and my bearing is extraordinary. I'm perfect for Mississippi. What does Miss think?" Fengjiu frowned at the nonsensical chatter. He stopped and glanced at the chattering person next to him, sizing him up. Shiran. "That's right, it's me." He nodded with a smile, his eyes staring at her. "Which tavern did you run out of? Don't you know where this is?" When he heard this, the corner of his mouth twitched. "A small brothel." He looked down at himself and asked, "What kind of small brothel can accommodate such a dignified and talented person like me?" "Miss, don't joke around." On the other side, Wanru came over and happened to see this scene. She quickly walked over, but the moment she approached, she heard the ghost doctor's cold voice. "If you're not from a small brothel, why do you keep throwing flirtatious glances at me? Could it be that your eyes are spasming?" Chapter 22:38. Hearing this, Wanru glanced at the man, then at Fengjiu. Then, she quickly stepped forward and came to Fengjiu's side. "Ghost Doctor, Martial Uncle Duan was looking for you just now." She looked at the man, somewhat puzzled. Was this person flirting with the Ghost Doctor? If Martial Uncle Duan found out, they would probably fight. Thinking of this, she quickly said, "I'm familiar with the City Lord's mansion. Why don't I take the Ghost Doctor around? Or go to the front to find Martial Uncle Duan? I want to take a nap. Take me to the guest room." Fengjiu said, glancing at Yi Shiran on the side, and then followed Wanru to leave. Watching Fengjiu leave, Yi Shiran's expression changed slightly. His aura became a little different after she walked away. He looked playfully at the gradually fading figure. It was unknown what he thought of, but the corners of his mouth slightly hooked up, revealing a mysterious smile. After walking a distance with Fengjiu, Wanru looked back and saw that the man didn't follow. She asked, "Ghost Doctor, that person didn't do anything to you, right?" "No." Fengjiu said, looking ahead and asked, "Is that person also a guest of the City Lord? I didn't see him a few days ago. I think he should have just arrived today. Maybe he's also the cultivator who posted the notice." Wanru said. Hearing this, Fengjiu nodded and didn't say anything more. The two walked slowly, chatting from time to time, and didn't stop until they reached the courtyard at the back. "Ghost Doctor, you live in this courtyard. Next to it is Shi Yan's courtyard. I live with her. If there's anything, you can find us." Wanru said softly and took her inside. "Wait and see if there's anything missing. I'll talk to Shi Yan and have the servant send it over." Fengjiu glanced at the courtyard, then entered the room to take a look. "No need. This is already very good. She wouldn't really live here for a long time. Then you rest first. I'll go ahead and talk to Shi Yan and Martial Uncle Duan, lest they worry." She bowed slightly, then retreated and closed the door. Seeing her leave, Fengjiu went to the bed and sat down. After taking off his boots, he lay down on the bed, pulled the quilt over him, and went to sleep. As Duan Yi said, he didn't rest much last night, and wandered around for most of the day today. As soon as he lay down, he quickly fell into a deep sleep. After chatting for a while, he stopped and didn't enter the room, led by Lu Xian and Wanru, came to Fengjiu's courtyard. Seeing the courtyard was quiet in the courtyard, he knew that the person in the room was had not yet awake. He knew the person in hadn't, so he stopped and didn't for. "Martial Uncle Duan, how about I take you to the guest room to rest first?" Lu Xian said, "Maybe the Ghost Doctor will wake up later." Duan Yi glanced at it and said, "Aren't there rooms here?" Hearing this, the two of them were stunned. It was good to have an empty room here, but after all, men and women were different. Was he going to live in the same courtyard as the ghost doctor? It didn't seem good, right? What? No. Duan Yi looked at Lu Xian. No, no. She quickly waved her hand. Of course you can live here, but I'm worried about whether it's inconvenient. No. Chapter 2239. Duan Yi nodded and said to the two, have someone prepare a hot bath in the evening. Lu Xian was startled for a moment, and then replied, yes, I'll remember it. Then we'll go back first and not disturb Martial Uncle Duan's rest. With that, the two bowed and turned to leave. After the two left, Duan Yi also went back to his room to rest. Ruan Ru, who walked out of the courtyard, couldn't help but say, when we were in the sect, we all heard that Martial Uncle Duan didn't get close to women and treated people indifferently. I didn't expect him to be so attentive to the ghost doctor. That's why we can't just believe in rumors. Everything has to be seen. Lu Xian said with a smile, just now, Martial Uncle Duan said that he would help find out the devil cultivator who killed the female cultivators in the city recently. With Martial Uncle Duan's words, I think the people in the city will soon not be so anxious. Yes. It's really a coincidence this time that Martial Uncle Duan happened to pass by here. Otherwise, with our status in the sect, it would be difficult to ask Martial Uncle Duan for help. The two talked as they returned to the courtyard. In the evening, they asked the servants to prepare water for a bath and send it over. When the sky gradually darkened, the two went to the courtyard to wait for them. Under the night sky, a banquet was set up in the city lord's mansion. All the cultivators were talking and laughing at the banquet, and the servants delivered food and wine one after another. At this moment, everyone stood up when the city lord arrived. City Lord Lu. Everyone smiled and cupped their hands. Hee, you don't have to be so polite. Please sit down. City Lord Lu smiled back and asked everyone to sit down. He glanced around and saw that there were still a few empty seats in front of him. He couldn't help but look at the housekeeper beside him. Xian hasn't come yet. Master, Miss went to Duan Immortal Master and should be coming soon. The housekeeper lowered his voice and said. Hearing this, the city lord nodded slightly, sat down, and said to the crowd, everyone, thank you for your righteousness. This time, I'll have to trouble you. Here, I'll propose a toast to you first. City Lord Lu is too polite. Everyone said with a smile, raised their wine glasses, and drank. At this time, they didn't see Duan Ye's figure, so they said, why hasn't fellow immortal Duan come yet? He should be here soon, right? I heard that Miss Lu went to invite him. Hee, fellow immortal Duan, you're putting on too much airs. You know there's a banquet tonight, yet you still ask Miss Lu to invite you. You're really putting on airs. The person who spoke shook his head. Sitting alone, Ishiran drank his wine. He didn't pay attention to those people's words and only gently swirled the wine cup in his hand, playing with it in boredom. Father, Martial Uncle Duan is here. Lu Xian's voice resounded, and everyone looked over as well. They saw Lu Xian and Ruan Ru walking in the front while Duan Yi and a peerlessly beautiful woman in red walked over slowly with leisurely steps behind her. When they saw the woman in red, the cultivators were slightly surprised, and many of them were stunned. Who was this woman? Why didn't they see him during the day? She was dressed in red, and her posture carried a languid aura. Her beautiful face contrasted with her dazzling red clothes, and there was actually a touch of enchanting and charming aura. It made them somewhat unable to move their eyes away, and they only felt that their minds were slightly moved. It was incomparably stunning. However, soon, they found that something seemed to be wrong. There was no trace of spiritual power on this woman. Could it be that she was just an ordinary mortal? Chapter 2240. She's just a mortal. She's just an ordinary person with no cultivation. How could someone like her enter such a banquet? Weren't the people sitting here tonight all experts with cultivation bases? We're all here to discuss how to deal with the devil cultivators in the city. How could we let an ordinary person join us? Let's not talk about anything else. This woman has a good appearance. An ordinary person without cultivation. So what if she has a good appearance? In the end, she can't withstand the ravages of time. After 100 years, won't she still be a pile of bones? That's true. No matter how beautiful she is, she's just an illusion. She's not from the same world as us. This kind of mortal woman is really not suitable to appear in such an occasion. That's right, that's right. Sitting with her is really beneath our status. A few cultivators whispered and discussed the red-robed Fingzhou. Only a few people did not join in the conversation. After sizing up Fingzhou, they poured wine and drank. When Ishiran, who had been sitting idly and drinking wine, saw Fingzhou arrive, his eyes lit up. His originally slanted body straightened a little because of her arrival. However, he was not in a hurry to go forward. Instead, he stared at her. The city lord knew the woman who came with Duanyi, but he did not expect her to be so beautiful. He remembered that his daughter had told him that this woman was called the ghost doctor. At that time, he thought, why did this ghost doctor sound so familiar? At this moment, when he saw the woman's appearance and red robes, a thought flashed through his mind. He finally remembered. Not long ago, the Heavenly Pill Pavilion rose to prominence in Hundred Rivers City. The pavilion master was called the Ghost Doctor. And her name seemed to be Fingzhou. When he thought of this, he could not help but feel excited. He did not care about the others and hurriedly stood up to greet her. Immortal Monarch, is this the Ghost Doctor Fingzhou? He asked Duanyi. However, his eyes were filled with excitement as he looked at Fingzhou. Hearing this, Duanyi looked at him deeply. He did not expect him to recognize Fingzhou. He glanced at Fingzhou and nodded. Not bad. I really didn't expect it to be the Ghost Doctor. I've been neglectful. He said apologetically as he cupped his hands and bowed to her, saying, Ghost Doctor, please take a seat, please take a seat. Lu Xian and Ruan Ru, who were watching from the side, were baffled. Fingzhou, the Ghost Doctor. Was the Ghost Doctor very famous? How come the two of them didn't know? The other cultivators were also puzzled when they saw this and were somewhat dissatisfied. Thus, someone said, City Lord Lu, aren't you going to introduce this lady to us? Even they had never seen City Lord Lu treat them with such respect. This woman was just a woman without any cultivation, how could she make City Lord Lu treat her differently? Come, the two of you, please take a seat. City Lord Lu smiled and invited them to take a seat. After everyone sat down, he said with a smile, everyone knows Duan Immortal Monarch, and this is the Ghost Doctor Fingzhou. Ghost Doctor Fingzhou. What was that? This woman was a doctor. Thinking of this, everyone's expressions were different as they stared at the woman. Such an enchanting and beautiful woman was a doctor? What was a mere doctor doing here? Could it be that she could help with the matter of capturing demonic cultivators? Chapter 2241. How could she be an ordinary person? Didn't City Lord Lu say it? She's the Ghost Doctor. In that case, she should be a doctor. Even a doctor is here. What are they trying to do? City Lord Lu, this girl can't be helping us catch fiendish cultivators, right? Hearing the crowd's mocking words, City Lord Lu couldn't help but frown slightly. He glanced at the Ghost Doctor and saw that she was pouring wine and drinking it, as if she didn't hear those cultivators' contemptuous words. Although she didn't care, she was still a guest, and his guest at that. He couldn't let these people humiliate and belittle her like this. Thus, he straightened his face and said to the crowd, "Everyone may not know, but the ghost doctor is definitely not an ordinary person. She..." Before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted. "Miss, so you're called Fingjo. Then how about I call you Joe, That, Joe, made Fingjo spit out the wine she had just drunk. Coincidentally, it sprayed all over Yi Xiuran's face. Yi Xiuran was dazed for a moment and felt the wine dripping down his face. He had never been treated like this before and felt his mind go blank when the wine sprayed on his face. Instinctively, he reached out to grab the corner of her clothes and wiped his face. Fingjo's mouth twitched when she saw this scene. Seeing this person pull the corner of her clothes to wipe his face, she felt that this scene was inexplicably familiar. Once upon a time, she seemed to have done this to Xianyuan Mo's. At this moment, it was her turn to experience it for herself. This feeling really wasn't too good. Duan Yi glanced at the black-robed man and instinctively frowned. Who was this person? When did Fingjo provoke him? If Fingjo knew what he was thinking, he would definitely cry out that he was wronged. It was clearly Yi Xiuran who stuck himself to her. City Lord Lu was also stunned when he was interrupted by this scene. He returned to his senses and whispered to his daughter sitting next to him, "What's going on?" They know each other. Thus, Lu Xian told him about Fingjo's encounter with Yi Xiuran at noon. After that, she asked again, "Father, who is this person? Do you know him? He also posted the notice today. I think his surname is Yi and he's a loose cultivator." As City Lord Lu spoke, his gaze landed on Yi Xiuran. To be able to survive after daring to take liberties with the ghost doctor, this person was quite a character. After Yi Xiuran finished wiping his face, he stared blankly at the red hem in his hand. Then, he narrowed his eyes and revealed an intoxicated smile. "Joe, this smells really good. Why don't you leave this hem for me as a souvenir?" As he spoke, he moved his hand and tore Fengzhou's clothes apart. With a tearing sound, a corner of Fengzhou's clothes was torn off. Everyone who saw this scene was dumbfounded. Was this person here to cause trouble? Or are you here to beat me up? In front of so many cultivators, as well as City Lord Lu, he actually dared to take liberties with a girl, and even tore off a corner of her clothes as a souvenir. Everyone was petrified. Even though they'd lived for so long, they'd never seen such a shameless person. Duan Ye's face darkened. He stood up, circulated the spirit power in his body, and waved his hand at the black-robed man. At the same time, he coldly shouted, "You're courting death." Chapter 2242. The two silhouettes leaped onto the roof and started fighting. Fingzhou, who was sitting below, picked up the torn corner of her dress and looked at it. She saw that her dress had been ruined just like that, especially when the corner of her dress had fallen into the hands of Yi Xiuran, who seemed to be having a fit. She played with the missing corner of her dress, narrowed her eyes, and looked towards the roof. Duan Yu was at the peak of the fairy realm, but Yi Xiuran, who was dressed in black, was actually able to fight him without being at a disadvantage. How interesting. A dark light flashed through her eyes, and the corners of her mouth held a faint smile as she stared at the two people on the roof. She held a wine glass in one hand and tapped the table with the other. The others did not speak anymore, but stared at the two people on the roof, somewhat surprised by the black-robed man's strength. They knew that Duan Yi was a genius of the Cloud Jade Immortal Sect, but who was this black-robed man? How could he fight with him without being at a disadvantage? "Ghost Doctor, why don't I take you to change your clothes first?" Lu Xian came to her side and asked. After all, she was a woman, and it was not very nice to have a corner of her dress torn off. "No need," Fingzhou said indifferently, "I'll go back and change later." Seeing this, Lu Xian returned to her father's side and sat down. She looked towards the roof and saw that Uncle Duan was fighting with that person, but it seemed that he could not hurt that person. She knew that that person's strength should be higher than his. After fighting for a while, Duan Yi also knew that this person's strength was higher than his. He was at the peak of the fairy realm, so this person should be at the celestial sage realm. What a celestial sage who could hide, he did not even reveal the slightest bit of celestial sage aura. However, when he saw that this person had torn the corner of Fengzhou's clothes, but he could not do anything to him, he could not help but feel angry, and his attacks became fiercer. Suddenly, his body technique changed, and so did the wind from his palm. Spiritual energy surged all over his body, and he suddenly struck out with his palm. The palm formed by the aura of spiritual energy grew from small to large, and from 1 to 2. The palms overlapped and attacked the person with a force that could not be heard. Bang! Bang bang bang! The first palm strike was dodged, but the subsequent palm strikes landed on Yixiuran's body. Yixiuran's leisurely expression changed slightly as he was sent flying. Pooh! He spat out a mouthful of blood and his body fell from the roof. He crashed into another wall and bounced to the ground with a loud bang. Hiss! He gasped and sat up from the ground. He raised his hand to wipe off the blood at the corner of his mouth, and then he raised his eyes to look at Duan Yi, who flashed down from the roof. His eyes flashed slightly, and he was extremely shocked in his heart. This man was only at the peak of the fairy realm, but his fighting strength was astonishing. He had never thought that he would be defeated by this man at the peak of the fairy realm with his strength as a celestial sage. When he was defeated by Fengzhou, he was convinced. However, after being defeated by this baby-faced man, his heart was in turmoil, and he had the urge to fight again. Since when did he, the Lord of the Temple of the Dark Night, become someone who could be defeated by anyone? Or could it be that everyone around Fengzhou was a freak? Were they all abnormal geniuses? Duan Yi flashed down from above and arrived in front of Yixiuran. His voice was cold as he said, "You dare to touch her? If you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish." Chapter 22:43. That's enough. She stood up and slowly walked forward, stopping in front of Yixiuran. Her clear gaze landed on his outstanding face. "Why do I feel like I've seen you somewhere before? Recognize him? Impossible. Not to mention that he wore a mask when they fought before, so she couldn't see his face. Even when he fought with Duan Yi just now, he didn't use any of his previous moves. Otherwise, how could he have lost so easily to this brat? If she had recognized him, she would have attacked long ago. Why would she need to ask him? Thus, he took out the piece of cloth torn from Fengzhou's body and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Then, he looked at her and the corners of his mouth twitched, revealing a smile. "Didn't we meet in the backyard at noon? Have you forgotten so quickly?" He rubbed his chest and glanced at Duan Yi. This brat was really heavy-handed. It was also because he was too careless that he was defeated. If it happened again, he would definitely beat him down. Fengzhou's eyes flickered. She stared at him for a long time without saying anything. After a long while, she turned and walked towards City Lord Liu. "City Lord, please excuse me for tonight's banquet." She nodded slightly and turned to leave. When Duan Yi saw this, he stared at the blood-stained corner of his shirt and frowned. He warned, "Stay away from her in the future." With that, he excused himself from City Lord Liu and chased after Fengzhou. The other cultivators were dumbfounded when they saw this scene. They stared blankly and couldn't figure out what was going on. That woman was just a doctor. Why did it seem like Duan Yi, immortal monarch, obeyed her? The corner of her shirt was torn, but before she could say anything, Duan Yi jumped out to protect her. What was the relationship between the two of them? And that cultivator surnamed Yi, he was a celestial sage expert. How could he lose to Duan Yi, who was at the peak of the fairy realm? One had to know that the difference in strength between the two realms was huge. Many cultivators couldn't cross this threshold in their entire lives. It was obvious how great the difference in strength was. Yet, Duanyi had defeated that guy. Who is this Fingzhou? Is she really just an ordinary doctor? Didn't City Lord Lu say he's called the Ghost Doctor? Perhaps he really is a skilled doctor. That's true. Otherwise, why would fellow immortal Duan be so protective of her? Did you hurt someone out of anger for her? Speaking of which, fellow immortal Duan is truly worthy of being a genius of the Cloud Jade Immortal sect. He's actually able to deal with someone stronger than him. His future is truly limitless. Not bad, not bad. Everyone was discussing, although the topic was about Fingzhou, but as they talked, they started to talk about Fingzhou. However, some cultivators were more cautious and no longer treated Fingzhou as an ordinary person. To be able to make City Lord Lu treat him differently, to be able to make Duanyi step forward to protect him, and to be able to make that celestial sage cultivator surnamed Yi want to get close to him, it was clear that this person definitely had some background. When City Lord Lu saw the two of them leave, he gestured for Wan Xian and Ruan Ru to follow them. Then, he walked towards Yi Shiran, who stood up from the corner of the wall, and asked, "Immortal Monarch Yi, are you all right?" A dignified celestial sage expert had been defeated by someone at the peak of the fairy realm in front of so many people. Even he didn't know how to comfort him. Chapter 2244. Fingzhou returned to the courtyard. Duanyi, who followed behind her, glanced at her torn clothes and said, "Go change your clothes first. We'll talk later." Hearing this, she looked back at him and sat down at the stone table in the courtyard. She smiled and said, "Talk about what? Say it." She played with the torn corner of her clothes and smiled. "Who is that person? How did you meet him?" He also sat down and looked at her. She had clearly been with him for the past 2 days, yet she could still provoke such a person. Fengzhou rested her chin on one hand and said, like he said before, "We met at the rockery at noon. I think he's called Yi Shiran. This person is somewhat unfathomable. You'd better be careful." Duanyi frowned and reminded her. He'd exchanged blows with Yi Shiran before, so he naturally knew that Yi Shiran wasn't simple. The reason Yi Shiran was able to defeat Yi Shiran was partly because Yi Shiran had underestimated Yi Shiran. If Yi Shiran had really used his full strength, then it was impossible for a dignified celestial sage to really lose to him. "And I know. I just feel that this person is somewhat familiar, but I don't remember when I've met him," she said thoughtfully. "Ah! Help! Ha 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 ha!" Suddenly, a cry of surprise rang out, followed by a wild laughter. The laughter carried with it a powerful pressure, and circles of spiritual energy aura visible to the naked eye also spread out in the night. Not good. Fengzhou stood up in an instant and rushed out with a step. Duanyi also quickly returned to his senses and hurriedly ran in the direction of the voice. However, after the two of them rushed out for a while, they saw a black figure in the middle of the night grabbing Lu Xian in one hand and Ruan Ru in the other like an eagle grabbing a chick. Wild laughter came out of his mouth. "Ha ha 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 ha. You want to deal with me with just the two of you? You're overestimating yourselves. Surnamed Lu, this demon will take your daughter away first. Her blood must be very fresh and sweet." As he spoke, he stuck out his tongue and licked it. His evil and sinister face was full of arrogance. "It really is a devil cultivator. Catch him. Don't let him escape." A group of cultivators rushed over from the front. When City Lord Lu saw that his daughter and Ruan Ru had been captured by the devil cultivator, his heart could not help but sink. He shouted sternly, "Let them go." He raised his chi and leaped into the air. Stepping on the wind, he rushed towards the devil cultivator with a sword in his hand. "Father!" Lu Xian's face was pale. Her acupoint seemed to have been sealed and she could not move or struggle. Ruan-Ru, who was caught in the other hand, also had a pale face. Although she was scared, she did not cry for help. She just tried to calm herself down and find a chance to survive. If they were captured by this devil cultivator, the two of them would probably end up with their chi and blood sucked dry. Rather than waiting for someone to save them, they might as well think of a way to save themselves. Because the two of them had originally come to the backyard to look for Fingzhou, they were close to Fingzhou and Duanyi. At this moment, Fingzhou glanced at the devil cultivator who wasn't very far away from her, as well as Lu Xian and Ruan-Ru, and her heart trembled slightly. She immediately moved her hand, and silver needles shot out with a swish. At the same time, she tapped the tip of her foot and flashed up. Chapter 22:45. A ribbon wrapped around the falling Lu Xian's foot with a whoosh and pulled her down. When the devil cultivator reached out to grab her, she threw her down. Even the devil cultivator couldn't react to the unexpected scene. "Catch!" Fengzhou shouted. She pulled the hand wrapped around the red armillary sash and threw Lu Xian in the direction of Duanyi. After throwing her down, she threw the red armillary sash in her hand again without even looking at it, attacking the devil cultivator. Duanyi followed closely behind her. When he saw her raise her chi and instantly pull out the red armillary sash to wrap around Lu Xian, he was already prepared to catch her. At this time, after catching her, he reached out to unseal her acupoints. Martial Uncle Duan, save Ruan-Ru. Lu Xian's face was deathly pale. She only felt that she had walked through the gate of death. As long as she thought of that person sticking out his tongue and licking her neck, she couldn't help but shiver, and her legs felt a little weak. "Don't worry," Duanyi said. Seeing that City Lord Lu had already rushed here, he raised his chi and flew into the air. At this time, the cultivators had already surrounded the devil cultivator to prevent him from escaping. They couldn't help but be slightly surprised when they saw Fingzhou in red holding a ribbon in her hand and fighting with the devil cultivator. The aura surging on her body was the aura of profound strength. It turned out that she was a profound cultivator. Moreover, she was a profound martial god. With such strength, even a profound cultivator was not weak. Duanyi joined the battle with his sword. When the other cultivators saw this, they also surrounded the devil cultivator. However, when the devil cultivator was attacked, he used Ruan-Ru, who was caught by him, to block them, making them feel as if their hands and feet were tied and unable to display their strength. "Come on. Come on if you don't want her to die. Ha 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 ha. A bunch of trash want to catch me. You're dreaming." The devil cultivator stared at the crowd and said in an arrogant and provocative voice. Suddenly, his aura sank. He waved his hand and shouted. A powerful pressure visible to the naked eye suddenly spread out. The powerful pressure that came from the sky carried a destructive aura. It was the pressure of an immortal venerable. In an instant, it sent everyone around flying, including Fingzhou. "Yes." Fingzhou let out a muffled groan as she was sent flying by the powerful airflow. The profound energy in her body was slightly disrupted, and her blood energy also surged towards her throat, but she forcefully suppressed it. The figure that staggered backwards was unable to stop under the pressure, and Duanyi was also sent flying a few meters away. However, just as she was about to fall to the ground, a black figure rushed over and reached out to support her. "Are you all right?" Yi Xiuran supported her. Seeing that her breathing was unstable, he said, "He's a venerable immortal expert. You're not his match. Withdraw first." Although he didn't know what was going on with her. Why was there only the aura of dark force in her body? However, with her current strength, she was no match for an immortal venerable expert, especially one of the 10 devils, Shui Luo. After Fingzhou steadied herself, she pulled away from him. She raised her eyes and stared at the arrogant devil cultivator with furrowed brows. A look of contemplation flashed across her eyes. "Ah!" Hiss. He's actually an immortal venerable expert. Chapter 2246. Listening to the words of those cultivators, Fingzhou's eyes moved slightly. Ruanru was still in the hands of that devil cultivator. How could she save her? Father, what should we do? Ruanru is still in the hands of that devil cultivator. Lu Xian said worriedly, but there was no way to save her. With her strength, she felt that it was a problem to get close. Don't worry, there will be a chance to save her. City Lord Lu comforted, thinking of a way in his heart. Lu Xian looked at the fearless devil cultivator in the air and Ruanru, who had not spoken or struggled. She knew in her heart that if the ghost doctor hadn't taken the opportunity to save her, she would still be in the hands of this devil cultivator at this time. However, she was saved, but Ruanru was not out of danger yet. At this time, Ruanru, who was caught by the devil cultivator, looked at the crowd below, and her whole person became calmer and calmer. She knew that the ghost doctor saved Shi Yan before because Shi Yan was closer to her, and the chance of saving her was greater. She was caught by the devil cultivator on the other side, so she was far away from him. Anyone would save her first. This absolutely had nothing to do with Shi Yan being the daughter of the city lord. She also knew that in the current situation, she could only find a chance to save herself. Otherwise, the people below would be worried about her safety and would not be able to take action. In addition, this devil cultivator was very strong. If it dragged on, it would really be difficult for her to survive. So, her heart moved slightly. Her eyes swept over the crowd, fell on the ghost doctor, and met her eyes. Inexplicably, she felt that if she could survive from this devil cultivator, she must have her help. However, she couldn't remind her with words, only with her eyes. Fingzhou was thinking of a way. When she looked up at Ruanru, she saw her eyes fall on her with expectation. Seeing this, her heart moved slightly. Ruanru was even calmer than Lu Xian. Could it be that she had some ideas? Just as she was thinking, she saw something poke out of her lapel and climb up quietly. It came to the hand of the devil cultivator that was holding Ruanru's lapel, and suddenly opened its mouth and bit down fiercely on that hand. Hiss! Shui Luo stared at the crowd below and laughed. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his hand. He sucked in a breath of air and instinctively flung the person in his hand away. Ah! She lost her balance and fell to the ground. The strength of the immortal venerable expert caused her to fall at an extremely fast speed. In addition, her acupoints were sealed. If no one caught her, she would be seriously injured even if she didn't die from the fall. At this moment, Fingzhou reacted faster than anyone else. She had been paying attention all along, and when the devil cultivator pulled Ruanru out, she also shot out several silver needles. At the same time, she leaped out with the tip of her toes and wrapped the red armillary sash around Ruanru's waist, pulling her to her side. At the same time, she withdrew her venerable immortal strength and safely brought her to the ground. Almost at the same time, City Lord Lu and Duan Yi raised their qi at the same time. When the other cultivators saw this, they also surrounded the devil cultivator. In an instant, saber lights and sword shadows shot out, and a powerful airflow and pressure spread out in the air. Ruanru, how are you? Lu Xian hurriedly came to her side. At this time, Fingzhou unsealed Ruanru's acupoints and asked, "Are you okay?" Chapter 2247. After taking a deep breath, she shook her head. Her lips trembled slightly as she said to Fingzhou, I'm fine. Thank you, Ghost Doctor, for saving me. With that, she tightly held Lu Xian's hand next to her, trying to suppress the fear in her body. Seeing her trembling like this, Fingzhou, in order to distract her, asked, "What was that thing just now? Was it your spiritual pet?" "It's Yuan, my spiritual pet." Speaking of this, Ruanru stretched out her hand and a white spirit pet the size of a fist crawled into her palm. The little thing was round and small. Its body was the size of a fist and it looked like a spirit mouse. When it opened its mouth, it revealed its sharp teeth, as though it was telling Fengjiu that it had used these teeth to bite the fiendish cultivator and save its master. Very good. Fengjiu smiled and glanced at the little spiritual pet. Hearing this, Ruanru also revealed a smile and responded. Her tense mood also loosened up. At this time, Shueluo, who was besieged by the crowd, was cut by City Lord Lu and Duan Yi. Blood seeped out, and the smell of blood made him even crazier and fiercer. Several cultivators were killed by him in the siege, and their corpses were thrown down from a high place as if they were garbage. He seemed to be in a killing frenzy. After killing those cultivators, he looked up to the sky and laughed again. Ha 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 ha. Since you forced me to kill, I'll fulfill your wish. His voice suddenly stopped, and his vicious and bloodthirsty eyes swept over the cultivators. Finally, they swept across the crowd and fell on Fengjiu, who was dressed in red. Not a single one of you can walk out of here alive. He waved his hands and slowly clenched them into fists. He stared at them and said in a bloodthirsty voice, "After killing you, I'll slaughter the city lord's mansion and then the whole city. I want you to die here one by one." Seeing how powerful Shueluo was, being able to kill a cultivator with a wave of his hand, the others couldn't help but hesitate. If they went forward and were killed, wouldn't that mean, thinking of this, a few cultivators couldn't help but retreat. After retreating about 10 meters, they apologized to City Lord Lu. "City Lord Lu, Shueluo is too strong. We are really no match for him. I'm sorry." As they spoke, they cupped their fists apologetically to City Governor Lu and turned around to leave. However, just as they turned around, Shueluo's figure flashed and instantly appeared behind them like a ghost. He clenched his fists and suddenly punched out with powerful pressure and airflow. "I will send you on your way." As soon as his voice fell, 2 fists instantly struck out. The fists directly penetrated the flesh of the 2 men from the back. A mournful scream was heard, and 2 loud bangs were heard. The fist struck out, and a bloody hole appeared in the bodies of the 2 men. Flesh and blood splattered out, dyeing the ground red and spraying on the opposite wall. It was a ghastly sight. Seeing this scene, Lu Xian and Ruanru turned pale and almost vomited. They supported each other and looked away, resisting the urge to scream out loud. Fengjiu looked at the scene with a dignified expression. He thought to himself, the strength of a celestial venerable is really extraordinary. He can actually punch 2 bloody holes in the bodies of the 2 cultivators. With such strength, who here can be his opponent? Chapter 22:48. If he joined forces with City Lord Lu and Duan Yi, they should have a chance to win. However, how could she make him attack? She couldn't help but frown. Although her profound strength had reached the Black Tortoise God realm, it was still impossible for her to deal with an immortal venerable. However, if she had the strength of a celestial sage and the emerald-edged sword, her chances of winning would be much higher. Right now, her spirit energy was sealed and the emerald-edged sword wasn't in her hands. She really didn't know how to deal with this situation. At this moment, Shueluo, who had just killed 2 cultivators, suddenly turned his head. His gaze swept across the crowd and landed on the beautiful red-clothed Fengjiu. A faint light flashed across his eyes. In the next moment, his figure flashed and rushed towards Fengjiu at an extremely fast speed. "Watch out!" Duan Yi shouted and tried to stop him, but he was repelled by a stream of air from Shueluo's hand. His body involuntarily retreated. When Yi Shuran saw this, he immediately moved forward and attacked Shueluo the moment he reached out to grab Fengjiu. Everyone only saw a cold light flash before their eyes. A biting cold sword chi shot towards Shueluo. The sharp air current reflected a chilling sword chi, forcing Shueluo to retreat several meters. He narrowed his eyes filled with hostility and stared at the man standing in front of the red-clothed woman. His gloomy voice was laced with bloodthirsty killing intent. Who are you? Yi Xiaoran blocked with his sword and stared sharply at Shueluo. I don't care who you grab, but you can't touch her. Hearing this, Fengzhou's eyes flickered. She stared at Yi Xiaoran for a moment before shifting her gaze to Shueluo. An intermediate immortal venerable realm devil cultivator who increased his cultivation through blood and qi. His methods were sinister and he had rich combat experience. It would be very difficult for Yi Xiaoran to defeat him alone. Each of the 10 devils under the devil venerable had extraordinary cultivation. It was no wonder this devil cultivator dared to run amok on this continent even with the suppression of the 4 great sections. While she was deep in thought, City Lord Lu and Duan Yi once again attacked with their swords. Yi Xiaoran's sword-wielding hand also turned. A sword light flashed and sword flowers flew out. The 4 figures fought in midair. The other cultivators didn't dare to step forward, but no one left. They guarded the surroundings below. In order to avoid being affected by the powerful pressure, they even retreated a distance away. Shueluo's hand turned into a claw and suddenly clawed out, tearing apart City Lord Lu's robe. Even the flesh on his shoulder was clawed out, leaving behind a few shocking bloodstains. Father! Lu Xian's heart tightened. She covered her mouth with both hands and exclaimed. Yes! City Lord Lu let out a muffled groan. With one hand covering the wound on his shoulder, he staggered and fell from the air. The blood oozing out of the wound on his shoulder could not be stopped. After a while, his hand was dyed red. Ha 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 ha. The City Lord of Lu He City is nothing more than this. Shueluo raised his head and laughed. His laughter abruptly stopped as he stared at Fengzhou again. It seemed that he really had his eyes on her. However, he also knew that if he wanted to capture her, he would have to get rid of these 2 first. Therefore, his bloodthirsty gaze turned and landed on Duan Yi. Chapter 2249. A powerful airflow that was visible to the naked eye rotated in Shueluo's hands like a vortex. The vortex grew bigger and bigger, causing the surrounding aura to become heavier and heavier. The spiritual energy in the surroundings was sucked into the vortex. Even some of the cultivators in the courtyard below could feel the strangeness of the vortex. No. His vortex seems to be, is. When a middle-aged cultivator saw the vortex break away from Shueluo's hands and form a vortex in front of him and exuding a powerful suction force, his expression changed and he stuttered. He couldn't finish his sentence and retreated more than 10 meters in an instant, for fear of being sucked into the vortex. Shueluo. Legend has it that Shueluo, one of the 10 devils, has the ability to open the door of darkness. This is the door of darkness. Quick! Run! Don't be sucked in, or you won't be able to come back. An old cultivator exclaimed and shouted at Duan Yi. This was because Duan Yi was the closest to the Shueluo, and from the looks of it, the Shueluo wanted to send Duan Yi into the dark door. Run! Run! That's the door of darkness. Once you're teleported in, you won't be able to come out again. Run! Fellow immortal Duan. Run! However, just as all the cultivators exclaimed, Duan Yi was suppressed by Shueluo's immortal venerable pressure. It was as if Mao Tai was pressing down on him, making him unable to straighten his back, mobilize the spiritual energy in his body, and escape. His body was being pulled forward step by the suction force of the vortex. Martial Uncle Duan. Martial Uncle Duan. Lu Xian and Ruan Ru exclaimed when they saw that Duan Yi was about to be sucked into the vortex. However, they couldn't save him. At this moment, Fengzhou, who was not far from them, suddenly jumped up and wrapped the red armillary sash around Duan Yi's feet, trying to pull him down. Do you think it's possible to save him? You're really indulging in fantasy. Shueluo's gloomy voice sounded. He turned his hands, and the suction force became stronger. Even though she was pulling Duan Yi, her body couldn't help but be pulled up. Seeing that the situation was getting more and more dangerous and that Feng Zhou would be sucked into the door of darkness if he wasn't careful, Yixiran immediately attacked. He injected spirit force into his sword and attacked Xue Luo with killing intent. Ha 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 ha. Go in. Go in. It's not easy for me to open the door of darkness. This time, it's your lucky day. As soon as Xue Luo finished speaking, Duan Yi was sucked into the whirlpool. His upper body was already inside, but his lower body didn't fall in because of Feng Zhou's red armillary sash. Seeing that Duan Yi was in danger, Feng Zhou promptly pulled back the red armillary sash in her hands. She pulled the red armillary sash closer to Duan Yi and pulled him back. With a slap, she sent him 10 meters away. At this moment, Yixiran attacked Xue Luo from behind, causing him to be caught off guard by the sword. This caused the blood qi around him to surge and fill the air with killing intent. He roared and struck Yixiran with 100% of his strength. At the same time, because the blood qi in his body dissipated, the door of darkness gradually closed. Chapter 2250. As soon as that strand of vital blood was poured in, a powerful suction force suddenly surged from the door of darkness that was gradually closing, and it was like a whirlwind that sucked in Feng Zhou, who was about to flee at a speed that was too fast for her ears to react. Feng Zhou. Duan Ye's expression changed drastically. He wanted to rush forward, but he was sent 10 meters away. It was impossible for him to save her. Feng Zhou. Yixiran's expression changed when he saw this. He was hit by Xue Luo's palm. Coupled with the scene, he was so anxious that he spurted out a mouthful of blood and fell from the sky. The door of darkness in the sky closed instantly as though it had never appeared and disappeared without a trace. Feng Zhou, who was dressed in red, also disappeared. What a pity. I originally wanted to send all of you in. Since you missed the opportunity, I'll have to kill all of you one by one. A sinister voice filled with killing intent spread in the night. Xue Luo's figure flashed and charged towards the cultivators below. However, at that moment, in the night sky, there were several white silhouettes on flying swords flying over. They were the elders of the magnificent immortal sect and they had come for Feng Zhou. Not long ago, they had received news from the magnificent immortal sect that the ghost doctor Feng Zhou was Feng Xing. Because of this, they had sent 1 or 2 immortal venerables to the Heavenly Pill Pavilion in 100 River City to have a talk with ghost Dr. Feng Zhou. When they passed by this area, they saw the unusual movement in the sky from afar. They also sensed the powerful pressure and aura of a demon cultivator. That was why they had rushed over. When they arrived at Luhe City, they saw the immortal venerable demon cultivator slaughtering the cultivators in all directions. The cultivators below were either dead or injured. Among them, there was someone they were familiar with. Duan Yi. One of the immortal venerables from the Cloud Jade Immortal Sect recognized Duan Yi. His heart sank when he saw Duan Yi fighting the demon cultivator with bloodshot eyes and wounds all over his body. He immediately attacked the demon cultivator. It's Xue Luo. An immortal venerable recognized the devil cultivator and said coldly, I've fought him before. He's one of the 10 great devil cultivators under the demon lord, Xue Luo. This person's methods are ruthless and his battle prowess is astonishing. When the other immortal monarchs saw the situation and heard the immortal monarch's words, they immediately attacked the demonic cultivator. Kill him. Don't let him escape. Several immortal venerables shouted coldly. Several rays of cold light streaked across the sky. With a wave of their hands, they formed a sword formation in midair and attacked Xue Luo. When Yixiran, who had joined forces with Duan Yi and City Lord Lu, saw that the 4 great immortal sect's immortal venerables had arrived, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief and fell to the ground. At this moment, because he was desperately defending, his body was covered in wounds of various sizes. Looking around, besides Lu Xian and Ruan Ru who were protected by the three of them, the other cultivators had been killed by Shui Luo. The ground was covered in corpses and splashed with blood. It was a ghastly sight. Duan Yi, why are you here? Didn't you follow the people from the sect to gain experience? Chapter 2251. At this moment, Duan Yi was clenching his sword tightly. His lips were tightly pursed. His baby face was covered with blood, and his eyes were red as he stared at Shui Luo, who was besieged by several immortal venerables. Don't kill him. I want him alive. Duan Ye's cold voice sounded, which stunned the celestial primes. Duan Yi, you're seriously injured. Let's sit down first. The celestial primes of the Cloud Jade Immortal sect wanted to help him to sit down, but he grabbed his hand tightly. Martial uncle. Duan Yi looked at him and grabbed his hand tightly. His eyes were red, and his voice was choked with sobs. Seeing Duan Ye's expression, the celestial primes of the Cloud Jade Immortal sect couldn't help but ask, what's wrong? Tell Martial uncle. He knew Duan Yi, who was his senior brother's favorite disciple. However, his eyes were red, and his voice was choked with sobs. What the hell happened? He opened the door of darkness and made Fingzhou disappear. Duan Ye's blood was boiling. At this moment, he was afraid, worried, and blamed himself. He was afraid that Fingzhou would die because of this. He was worried that she would never come back. He blamed himself even more. If she hadn't tried to save him, she wouldn't have been sucked into the vortex. When the celestial primes heard this, his eyebrows twitched. He looked at Duan Yi and said cautiously, Fingzhou. It can't be that ghost Dr. Fingzhou, right? It's her. Duan Ye's words made the celestial prime stiffen. He couldn't help but raise his voice. What? It's really her. She was sucked into the door of darkness. It's over, it's over. His expression changed drastically, and he was so anxious that he was walking in circles. They came for ghost Dr. Fingzhou. They wanted to go to the Heavenly Elixir dispensary in the 100 River City to find her. Who knew that they would encounter this halfway? Shui Luo's door of darkness. How could this be? However, just as his mind was in a mess, he heard a blood-curdling scream. When he looked up, he saw the immortal venerables killing Shui Luo. His heart trembled as he murmured, it's really over this time. Something big has happened. Duan Yi also saw the scene of Shui Luo being killed, and his lips moved slightly, but he couldn't say a word. The speed of the several immortal venerables was too fast. It only took them a few moves to kill Shui Luo, so fast that he didn't even have time to react. Right now, he was only concerned about where Fengzhou would be sent after being sucked into the door of darkness. His only concern was whether he would live or die after entering that place. Could she come back alive? Or perhaps, could they go and find her? Humph. These demons are getting more and more presumptuous. You actually dare to come out and cause trouble. Do you really think that our 4 great immortal sects are just decorations? An immortal venerable said. With their combined strength, killing Shui Luo was as easy as blowing off dust. Another immortal venerable sighed and shook his head while looking at the corpses on the ground. It's a pity that we came too late and allowed Shui Luo to kill so many cultivators. If we had arrived 30 minutes earlier, perhaps there wouldn't be so many casualties. Another immortal venerable sighed and shook his head while looking at the corpses. Chapter 2252. They couldn't help but feel puzzled. What's wrong with this celestial prime? Why does he look a little strange? The few of them looked at each other before descending from the sky and walking towards them. Thank you for saving us, celestial primes. City Lord Lu hurriedly stepped forward and bowed to the celestial primes to express his gratitude. The celestial primes waved their hands and said, "It's okay. We just happened to pass by." It's just that we were one step too late and let Shuai Luo kill so many people. City Lord Lu glanced at the corpses on the ground and said sadly, "Don't worry, Celestial Primes. I will definitely give them a proper burial." He didn't expect that the demonic cultivator would be Shuai Luo. He also didn't expect that tonight would be so tragic. Not only did so many cultivators die, but they also almost lost their lives here. Even the ghost doctor was sucked into the vortex because of this. He didn't know if she was still alive or not. The Celestial Primes nodded when they heard City Lord Lu's words. They walked towards the Celestial Primes of the Cloud Jade Immortal Sect and glanced at Duan Yi. Then, they asked, "Old friend, what's wrong? Why do you look a little strange?" It's over, it's over. It's really over this time. We're in big trouble." The Celestial Prime shook his head. The current situation was unexpected. "What's over? Tell us in detail," one of the Celestial Primes asked. "Duan Yi, didn't you go with your Uncle Master and the others to gain experience? Why are you here?" Another Celestial Primes of the Cloud Jade Immortal Sect asked, wondering why Duan Yi was here. "Uncle Master, I'm with Fengzhou." Duan Ye's voice was a little stupefied. At this moment, his mind was in a mess and he completely ignored the fact that his wounds were still bleeding. "Uncle Master Duan, why don't you bandage your wounds first? I'm afraid that you won't be able to take it if you continue like this." Lu Xian stepped forward and whispered. Although she knew that it was impolite for them to interrupt when the Venerable was talking, she saw that his body was shaking slightly and his face was getting paler and paler. She was worried that his body would not be able to bear it. When the Immortal Venerables heard this, they looked at the wounds on Duan Ye's body. They saw large and small wounds all over his body. Some of the wounds were deep and were still bleeding. The blood had soaked his clothes. His face was pale due to the excessive blood loss. His body was swaying slightly as though he was about to fall. One of them said, "Let's go in first. Let's bandage the wound first. Immortal Venerables, please come this way." City Lord Lu endured the injuries on his body and invited them to the front yard. At this time, the guards and servants who had been hiding in the city lord's mansion and had not come out came forward to help the injured people to the front. Behind him, Ishiran paused for a moment with his sword in hand, then followed. He also wanted to know if these Immortal Venerables had any way of finding out about Fengzhou's current situation. With Fengzhou's strength, he should be fine after entering the Door of Darkness. However, he did not know what was behind the Door of Darkness. What kind of place would the Door of Darkness teleport her to? Would he have a chance to come back? Even he did not know the answer to these questions. Perhaps, he could only find out from the people of the Immortal Sect. Chapter 2253. Tell us. What's going on? One of the Celestial Supremes asked as he glanced at the crowd. His eyes then fell on the two Celestial Supremes from the Cloud Jade Immortal Sect. One of the Celestial Supremes from the Cloud Jade Immortal Sect took a deep breath and said, "That's what happened." To sum everything up, Fengzhou was sucked into Shuai Luo's Door of Darkness. Hearing this, the Celestial Supremes were startled. What do you mean by Fengzhou was sucked into Shuai Luo's Door of Darkness? Fengzhou. They paused and looked at the person beside them and whispered, "Why does it sound so familiar?" Fengzhou is Ghost Dr. Fengzhou. He's the person we're looking for this time. Now that he's gone, we don't know where he was sent to after entering the Door of Darkness. That's why I'm done talking. The Celestial Supremes from the Cloud Jade Immortal Sect said inside. We have to report this to our sect and discuss countermeasures. Hearing this, the Celestial Supremes were shocked. Some stood up abruptly while others exclaimed. What? Ghost Dr. Fengzhou. You're saying that Ghost Dr. Fengzhou from the Heavenly Pill Dispensary was sent into the Door of Darkness? That's right. The Celestial Supremes from the Cloud Jade Immortal Sect nodded. How could this be? The few of them looked at each other in shock. They had come out this time for Ghost Dr. Fengzhou. Now that she had been teleported into the Door of Darkness, how were they going to explain this? Do you know where he will be sent after entering the Door of Darkness? Yi Xiuran asked as his gaze fell on the few of them. Hearing this, the few celestial supremes glanced at him and said, "We don't know. None of us have been sent into the Door of Darkness. We've never heard of anyone coming out after entering the Door of Darkness." Hearing this, Duan Ye's heart sank. No one has come out. He looked at the celestial supremes who spoke and asked, "What's the chance of survival after entering that place?" "It varies from person to person." The Immortal Venerable looked at them and said, "Although no one has ever come out after entering the Door of Darkness, it doesn't mean that they will die. It depends on their adaptability and ability to protect themselves." The Immortal Venerable stood up and walked around the hall with his hands clasped behind his back. According to legend, behind the Door of Darkness is the land of extreme evil. It's a sealed place where there are all kinds of abandoned villains, devil cultivators and evil cultivators. There are also all kinds of fierce beasts there. Some people can survive there while some die not long after entering. His voice paused for a moment before he said thoughtfully, "I've heard that there is a void that leads to the land of darkness. However, even I don't know where it is. However, I've heard from the sect leader that those who enter the Door of Darkness have a chance to return. However, I don't know what method they use to return." "You are a celestial sovereign from the magnificent immortal sect?" Yi Xiuran looked at him and asked. The celestial sovereign glanced at Yi Xiuran and nodded. "That's right. So if we ask your sect leader, he should know better." Yi Xiuran asked the main point. Chapter 2254. Upon hearing the words of the celestial venerable of the magnificent immortal sect, the other celestial venerables looked at each other and whispered among themselves. Then, one of them said, "Let's return to our respective sects and report this matter to the sect leader. Duan Yi, come back with us." The Cloud Jade Immortal Sect Celestial Supremacy said to Duan Yi, "I'm going to 100 River City's Heavenly Pill Dispensary." Duan Yi shook his head. Now that something had happened to Fengzhou, he had to tell them about it. The two celestial supremacies didn't say anything. They only told him to be careful and pay more attention to his injuries. Thus, after settling the matter, they didn't stay for long and returned to their respective sects. Duan Yi rested in the Lu estate and prepared to leave at dawn. Yi Xiuran also left not long after the celestial supremacies left, on the other side. Fengzhou, who had been sucked into the whirlpool and transported into the Door of Darkness, was currently unconscious on a hillside. His surroundings were pitch black, and the air was filled with an eerie aura. The roars of ferocious beasts could be heard in the night, causing one to tremble in fear. A gust of night wind blew, and the eerily cold wind caused her body to instinctively shiver. Before she could open her eyes, she heard the faint sound of a bell ringing. When she heard the sound of the bell, her heart skipped a beat. She instantly opened her eyes and jumped up. Her divine sense regained its clarity. In her mind, she recalled the scene when she was sucked into the Door of Darkness. She couldn't help but look around. It was pitch black and there was nothing. She could only feel a gust of cold wind blowing, causing her hair to stand on end. Ring, 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 the small purple bell on her waist made a series of ringing sounds. She had been wearing it ever since her sworn sister, Wanyan Qianhua, gave her this necklace. Now, she looked around and didn't see anything. However, the bell kept ringing, and the eerie cold wind in the air was even more bone-chilling. She didn't see anything, but she felt like she was surrounded by invisible things. The feeling of being targeted made her hair stand on end. She steadied her mind and lowered her head to look at the bell and small gourd at her waist. Only then did she stride forward. In the darkness of the night, there was still no shadow of anything. However, the bell on her waist was still ringing in the wind, making a faint ringing sound. In the night, the moonlight was covered by dark clouds. Only a little bit of moonlight spilled from the night sky. On this unknown path, a woman in a red dress with her hair draped over her shoulders was walking lightly. From afar, she really did look like a ghost. Behind her, a dozen shadowy figures floated in the night sky and followed her from afar as though they had merged into one with the night sky, making it impossible for anyone to see their existence. Fengjiu walked along the path. Even if she didn't look back, even if she couldn't see the shadows around her, she knew that those things were following her. But where exactly was this place? What kind of place was she sucked into by the whirlpool? Why was the eerie aura here? Chapter 22:55. After walking for a while, she felt that something was amiss. Especially when she walked along the small path and came to an open space, she saw some devil cultivators and heretic cultivators sitting in groups of 3 to 5, as well as some cultivators who were filled with murderous aura. Demonic cultivators and heretic cultivators aside, the cultivators who were filled with murderous aura and reeked of blood. Their murderous aura permeated the air. No matter how one looked at them, they did not look like ordinary itinerant cultivators. There were about 30 to 40 people sitting around the place she passed by. Some were sitting alone, some were sitting in groups of 2 or 3, and some had a ferocious beast lying beside them. Among these people, most of them were men, and there were only 1 or 2 women. Moreover, they were wearing revealing clothes and were hanging around some powerful cultivators. Her appearance naturally attracted the attention of these people. Whether it was evil cultivators, devil cultivators, or those cultivators who were filled with baleful qi and murderous intent, all of them looked at her strangely, sizing her up. In the eyes of these people, this woman in red was like a demon that had descended to the world. She walked slowly with the moonlight behind her back. Her red clothes were enchanting, and her black hair was draped over her shoulders. There was a cold and indifferent expression on her beautiful face. There wasn't the slightest bit of qi around her, but it was enough to make everyone wary. In such a place, how could a person without ability survive? This woman's appearance was enough to topple cities. Her red dress was still dazzling in the night, and it was so clean that it was not stained with blood. Such a person was naturally strange. Moreover, the moment she appeared, the surrounding air became a bit colder. That kind of gloomy aura pervaded the air, and everyone could feel that kind of cold aura. However, this woman didn't seem to notice it at all. Her gaze swept across everyone indifferently, and she continued to walk forward without stopping. Unexpectedly, everyone was just looking at her. No one made a move, and no one made a sound. No one knew that Fengjiu's heart was tense at this moment. With just a glance, she discovered that these people were all in the immortal sage realm. Some of them were even at the peak of the immortal sage realm. The stench of blood on these people was extremely heavy. Their baleful qi and murderous intent were also extremely heavy. Even the people she had personally nurtured didn't have such a bloodthirsty murderous intent. In this place, she restrained her profound energy aura and didn't reveal any of it. Because she knew that if these people found out that she was a profound cultivator, they would probably attack her one after another. It was very likely that they would even join hands. When she passed by these people, she could only put on an indifferent face and assume the posture of an expert. Step by step, she walked past them unhurriedly. The slightest carelessness would cause them to question and investigate her, thus putting herself in danger. If he fell into the hands of these people, death would not be the easiest thing to do. If he fell into the hands of these people, it was extremely likely that his cultivation would be crippled and he would become their plaything. Chapter 22:56. Those people watched as she walked away step by step, gradually disappearing into the night. However, no matter how beautiful she was and how breathtaking they were, in the end, no one dared to make a move. This was because the chilling aura that had enveloped them had disappeared along with her departure. In a place like this, the ghosts were not the same as in other places. They were not easy to deal with. It was precisely because of this that they did not dare to act rashly. Even though the woman in red had indeed caused their hearts to burn and they had the urge to pounce on her, in the end, their rationality prevailed over the desire in their hearts. To be able to survive in this place, every one of them was very clear about the way of survival here. Those that they could not afford to provoke, they could not afford to provoke. Otherwise, it was very likely that they would pay with their lives. Fengjiu only stopped when she was about 500 meters away from that place. She turned around and frowned. After pondering for a moment, she took out the Aurora transfer scroll from her space. This treasure could be transferred back to any place. Although she did not know where this place was, as long as she was still on this mainland, she should be able to return. She held the Aurora transfer scroll in her hand and looked around. There was still nothing, but that eerie feeling that made one's hair stand still remained. She knew that those things were still staring at her. However, if those things did not dare to make a move on her, why did they keep following her? Could it be that they were looking for an opportunity? After scanning her surroundings, she looked at the teleportation scroll in her hand and opened it. However, the moment the Aurora teleportation scroll opened, she was stunned. How could this be? She muttered to herself as she held the Aurora teleportation scroll tightly in her hands. Her eyes were fixed on it. In the past, every time she opened the transfer scroll, the name of the place would float up and the transfer scroll would emit a ray of light. However, at this moment, it was completely calm. Those words lay there quietly. They did not float, nor did they emit any light. Even when she injected her dark force into them, there was no movement. She could not help but feel a sense of oppression. It was as if there was a ray of hope, a ray of light, but it was suddenly shattered. She could not help but take a deep breath as she tried to calm her fluctuating emotions. She held the transfer scroll in her hand and tried again, but there was still no reaction. In the end, she could only put the transfer scroll away. She braced herself for the next step and the dangers she would face. The sky was still dark. Therefore, she sat down cross-legged on the ground and closed her eyes to think. At the same time, she released her divine sense to pay attention to the movements around her. The moment she released her divine sense, she felt that there were still one or two divine senses locked onto her. She knew that there were still some people among those people who were observing her. They didn't dare to make a move now because they had guesses and were afraid. However, when their guesses and fears couldn't stop their desires, they would definitely make a move on her. At that time, with her strength alone, how could she resist a few dozen celestial saints? Bye. Chapter 2257. When the sky gradually brightened, she could feel that the cold aura around her had yet to dissipate. The bell on her waist was still gently shaking, making a ringing sound. Thus, she lit a small pile of grass and used the fog to block her vision to flash into her space. When the fog gradually dissipated and the sky gradually brightened, the surrounding ghosts were unable to find the red figure. Each and every one of them lingered around, unwilling to leave. It was as if they didn't believe that she could disappear without a trace under their watchful eyes. When the sun rose, the cultivators began to leave one after another. Some of them came over, but when they saw that the red-clothed woman was no longer there, their eyes flashed with a strange light. That's right. That person doesn't look like an ordinary person. Perhaps she really is a powerful person. Otherwise, how could a woman like her dare to strut around in front of them without fear? Since they couldn't find the woman, everyone began to leave one after another. Only one or two people swept their eyes over the air, as if they could feel that the cold aura was still pervading the air. However, they couldn't find the woman's figure in the surroundings, so they didn't stay. In the space, Fengjiu was sitting cross-legged as she stared at the scene outside. Her eyes flashed with a strange light and her expression was unclear, as if she was thinking about something. Only when she saw that those people had left did she close her eyes to rest. After resting, she would go out and find a way to find out where this place was and how to return to Hundred Rivers City. The morning quietly passed by. At noon, after resting in the space for an entire morning, her originally tense mind relaxed a bit. She wasn't in a hurry to go out. Instead, she changed her appearance in the space and put on a few more sets of clothes. Finally, she put on a set of shabby clothes. Looking at her reflection in the mirror, she couldn't help but reveal a satisfied smile. The person in the mirror had changed from a beautiful woman to a bearded man. Due to wearing many sets of clothes, although he wasn't rough, he still had the appearance of a man. There was a frightening scar on his face that stretched from the top corner of his left eye to the bottom corner of his right eye. His thick and heavy eyebrows set off his ferocious face, making him exude a murderous aura that kept people away. Not only did she change her appearance, but she also changed her appearance from head to toe. Even those immortal sage experts, or even immortal venerables, wouldn't be able to see through her disguise. With her current appearance, she believed that it would be easier for her to blend in with those people. Moreover, she wouldn't attract their attention. On the contrary, it would be safer and less troublesome than when she was a woman in red. All right. Now, I'm only missing a large blade. She muttered softly and looked at the pile of weapons in her space. Then, she picked out a sharp blade that was about 4 fingers wide. She carried the large blade on her shoulder and went to the spirit spring. Looking at the surface of the water, she raised her thick eyebrows and glared with her sharp eyes. In an instant, she looked like a fierce and rough man. Not bad, not bad. Chapter 22:58. The noon sun was a little glaring, but when she appeared in this place, she still felt a cold aura. Moreover, the bell on her waist rang again. She frowned slightly and glanced at her surroundings before walking forward. Indeed, they were not ordinary ghosts. They dared to appear under the scorching sun, but they did not dare to get close to her. Since that was the case, she would just ignore them. She threw out an ordinary flying instrument and gradually shook off the ghosts behind her. Only when she saw a city gate in the distance did she get down from the flying instrument. Black Mountain City. She muttered these 3 words and was slightly surprised. What kind of place was this? Looking ahead, he saw several demonic cultivators guarding the city gate. However, it seemed as if there was no one inside the city. It was very quiet. Should she go in? She hesitated and hid her aura behind a tree. She sat down behind a tree by the roadside and wanted to observe for a while before making a decision. However, she sat here for about an hour and no one came out, not to mention going in. Just as she was about to leave, she saw a group of devil cultivators, heretic cultivators, and itinerant cultivators walking over. She took a look and saw that there were about 20 people in the group. They were walking together with an arrogant aura. Before they even got close, their loud and wanton voices could already be heard. Those people must be dreaming. A beautiful woman in red. Ha 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 ha, we've been active in this area for so long and have never seen any beautiful woman. How could such a person appear in a place like this? That's right. From what I see, they want to take the opportunity to join our Black Mountain City and become one of our people. They don't have any power to rely on here and can only rely on those scattered people. I reckon it won't be long before they're killed or robbed. They don't even see that it's so easy to enter our Black Mountain City. Even if they make up a story, they can't make it more believable. In such an evil place, female cultivators are rare, not to mention a beautiful woman in red. That's right. Master even told us to go outside and capture some female cultivators. However, we didn't meet any female cultivators on this trip. Even if there were, they were protected by some stronger people. It's not easy to find a woman here. Who asked those who were exiled to the land of all evil to be so many evil people? Female cultivator. Hee, I reckon there are a few banshees. The group of people talked and laughed as they walked towards the city. When they were about to enter the city, one of them suddenly turned around and looked around. "What's wrong?" one of them asked as he turned around to take a look. "Why do I feel like someone is watching us?" As the man spoke, he scanned the surroundings with his bloodthirsty eyes. He released his divine sense, but he didn't detect anyone else's aura. Others? Ha ha ha. The man next to him laughed and patted him on the shoulder. "You're worrying too much. Don't you know where you are? Who dares to come here? What's more, in front of our city gate, there's a barrier laid down by Master. Other than those who wear our waste tokens, who else can enter? Who would be so foolish as to rush to their deaths?" Hearing this, the person nodded and said, That's true. I was thinking too much." Then he followed his people and went through the barrier before entering the city gate. Chapter 22:59. After making a round, she entered the forest. She leaped onto a big tree to rest as she thought about the news she had heard earlier. What the hell was this place? She frowned. She really had no idea what to do now. She originally thought that Black Mountain City was a populated town, but now it seemed that Black Mountain City was a place similar to a bandit stronghold. That place could not be entered at all. Just as she was thinking, she suddenly heard the roar of a ferocious beast. She quickly snapped back to her senses and saw a group of ferocious beasts that looked like dogs but were not dogs. They were about half the height of a person and were running towards her. They were barking non-stop. The black dog that was running in front kicked its hind legs and pounced forward. It pounced towards her, scaring her so much that she instinctively let out a low cry. She retreated and fell from the tree. Damn it! What kind of dog is this? After she steadied herself, she looked at the ferocious beast that was half the height of a person and had two sharp fangs. It looked like a wild dog, but its body was surging with a dark aura. It let out a low growl and stared at her with its teeth bared. When it approached her step by step, she immediately broke into a run. Roar! Awoo! Dozens of big black ferocious dogs chased after her on all fours. In order to avoid this group of ferocious beasts, she took out the medicine bag at her waist and sprinkled it behind her. She quickened her pace, and not long after, she shook off the group of ferocious beasts behind her. When she came to a place, she half bent her waist and placed her hands on her knees. She gasped for breath and looked back. When she saw that they did not chase after her, she sat down on the ground. What is this? It's actually chasing me. She sneered and said self-deprecatingly, a dragon in the shallows will be teased by shrimps. A tiger in the plains will be bullied by dogs. This is the situation right now, isn't it? She had inexplicably arrived here and could not return. She did not even know where this place was. All she met were either fiendish cultivators, heretic cultivators, or evil people. Even a group of ferocious beasts that looked like dogs was chasing after her and barking. Her mood was about to explode. However, at this moment, a demonic cultivator appeared not far away. When he noticed the figure sitting on the ground, he immediately restrained his aura and walked forward step by step. When he was about 5 meters away, he suddenly attacked the person. Fengjiu was currently on the verge of exploding when she felt the murderous aura coming from behind her. This time, she did not choose to avoid the battle. Instead, she quickly turned around and slashed out with the large saber in her hand. Her profound energy aura also followed the slash of the large saber in her hand, and a sharp and intimidating saber aura streaked across the air. Swish! The demonic cultivator was shocked and quickly retreated. However, he was still one step too late. His abdomen was still cut by the blade energy. His clothes were torn, his flesh was cut open, and blood seeped out. The sudden pain caused him to instinctively let out a muffled groan. He covered his wound with one hand and quickly retreated. He vigilantly stared at the man who had turned around. Previously, the man did not seem to have any aura surging from his body, but in an instant, he exploded with such a strong combat ability. Just one attack had injured him, and he could not help but be shocked. He wanted to escape from this dangerous person, so he slowly moved back step by step. Chapter 2260. What are you trying to do? The demonic cultivator's voice trembled as he felt the aura of death enveloping him. He could not help but feel regret. If he had known earlier, he would not have attacked this person while he was alone. Fengjiu stared at him without saying a word. Instead, the dark energy in her body surged. She stabbed the large saber in her hand into the ground, and in the next moment, her figure flashed and her fist, which contained a strong dark energy, swung violently. Whoosh! Bang bang bang! The sound of her fists landing on the ground was heard. The demonic cultivator was stunned for a moment. He could not dodge in time and took a direct hit from Fengjiu's fists, which contained a strong hidden force. Every punch contained a hidden force. When it landed, it was as if a heavy iron hammer had struck down. The muffled banging sound was unusually clear, and occasionally, there was the crisp sound of bones breaking. Screams of agony rang out in the forest, startling the birds in the forest and causing them to flap their wings and fly away. Some of the cultivators in the forest heard the screams, and each of them had a different expression on their faces. However, no one went near the source of the sound. This kind of thing happened too often. Sometimes, meddling in other people's business would cause them to lose their lives. Surviving in this kind of place, all they had to do was to survive. The screams of agony grew weaker and weaker. However, at this moment, Fengjiu, who had vented her anger, stopped. She stepped on the demonic cultivator, whose face was bruised and swollen and was on the verge of death, and asked, "Do you want to live?" When the demonic cultivator, who was already powerless to resist, heard this, he quivered and hurriedly replied, "Yes. Yes." The person in front of him was like a demon in his eyes. He had thought that he would be beaten to death. Since he had asked this question, did that mean that he had a chance of survival? "Even if you want me to follow you, I will agree. As long as you spare my life and don't kill me," the demonic cultivator said as he looked at Fengjiu. His eyes were filled with a strong will to live. "Let me ask you, where is this place?" Fengjiu asked in a low voice. Not only had she changed her appearance, even her voice had become hoarse and masculine. Hearing this, the demonic cultivator was stunned, as if he did not expect Fengjiu to ask this question. He pointed at Fengjiu's foot on his chest and said, "Can you, let me sit up first." "Speak." Fengjiu's voice and increased the force of her foot. The demonic cultivator groaned and blood flowed from his mouth. And a trace of fear in his eyes. I'll speak." The demonic cultivator hurriedly said, enduring the pain in his body, "This is the land of extreme evil. It is a place set up by the 4 great immortal emperors. Those who enter this place cannot leave. In this land of extreme evil, there are 8 great villains. Each of them occupies 8 mountains, and they have many cultivators under them. If you follow them, other than having food to fill your stomach, your safety will also be guaranteed. However, if you submit to them, you will have to acknowledge them as your master. Therefore, some cultivators who do not want to be bound are scattered all over this place. They specialize in killing cultivators and stealing things for a living. Stealing things for a living. Chapter 2261. That's right, this place that was carved out by the immortal emperors is isolated from the original mainland. The food here is also limited, and most of the food is taken by the 8 great villains. Although we are devil cultivators, we don't have any fasting pills in this place, so we can only find food to fill our stomachs. So most of the time, we snatch and kill those we can kill to reduce the wastage of resources. Is there really no way to leave this place? She asked with a frown. This is a barrier and array set up by the immortal emperors, and it was set up by 4 immortal emperors together. Naturally, it's not something that we can break. Moreover, there are restrictions here. Anyone who enters this place, no matter if they are devil cultivators, heretic cultivators, or cultivators from the righteous path, will remain at the same level of strength they had when they entered. No one can raise their strength or advance in here. As the devil cultivator spoke, his face became increasingly pale, and a mouthful of blood spilled from his mouth. His body was covered with injuries, and even if she didn't kill him, it would be difficult for him to survive here. Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed. It was indeed a restriction. It was precisely because of that restriction that her Aurora teleportation array was unable to be used here. But fortunately, although there was a restriction here, her spiritual energy and profound energy were not restricted. Otherwise, she would really be dead if she entered here. Tell me all the powers here. She retracted her leg. Since this place was set up by the 4 immortal emperors, there must be a way to break it. She did not believe that anyone who entered this place could not leave. Cough cough, I. Pfft. He sat up and spat out a mouthful of blood. His body was on the verge of collapse, as if he would collapse at any time. Seeing this, Fengjiu frowned. This person was a devil cultivator, and she had hit him with all her might just now. Every punch contained a force of 1,000 pounds, and she did not need to look to know that his internal organs were all damaged. She had never been kind to people who wanted her life, not to mention this person was a devil cultivator. However, she still wanted to find out other things from him, so it was not appropriate to let him die like this. Hence, she turned her palm and 3 silver needles pierced out, smoothing out his blood flow. Feeling the abnormality in his body, the devil cultivator was slightly startled and looked at the man in front of him with a pale face. "You won't die, speak," she said in a low voice. His body was indeed much better than before. Thus, the demonic cultivator told him everything that Fengjiu wanted to know and everything that he already knew. After obtaining the information she wanted to know, Fengjiu glanced at the demonic cultivator on the ground and said, "I'll let you off this time. Next time, you better not let me see you again." With that, she turned and left. After walking out of the forest, she threw out the aircraft and jumped on it. Stepping on the aircraft, she took off from the ground and flew all the way to the sky. Since he had set up a formation and barrier, he had to see what kind of formation and barrier it was before he could think of a way to leave this place. Her figure slowly rose. The further she was from the ground, the greater the pressure above her head. Even though she had the might of an ancient divine beast in her body, she could still feel the invisible pressure spreading throughout the sky. Chapter 2262. Who is that? Why is he up there? That idiot, is he trying to escape from here? Doesn't he know where he is? If we could escape so easily, would we still be locked up here? People who have been here for a while wouldn't do such a stupid thing. Could it be that this person just came in? The people below were discussing in groups of 3 to 5. They were a little curious about the person who was trying to break through the barrier above. Therefore, all of their gazes fell on that person. Some wanted to watch a good show. Because of the restriction here, when they reached a certain height on their flying swords or flying artifacts, they would be pressed down by the powerful pressure above. It was the feeling of weightlessness that came from being directly pressed down from the sky. It was as if the spiritual energy in their bodies was instantly suppressed. Immediately after, a huge mountain pressed down on them from above with a bang, making it impossible for them to dodge or bear the pressure and fall from above. Those who were pressed down by the pressure from above, even if they didn't die, would be half dead. At the very least, they had seen several cultivators and devil cultivators who tried to leave from above. They were pressed down by the pressure and directly fell to their deaths. At this moment, Fengjiu was completely unaware that although the higher she went, the stronger the pressure was. However, she had the pressure of an ancient divine beast in her body. Moreover, her spiritual power was different from ordinary people. Others couldn't withstand it, but she could. Therefore, when she reached the top and stood on top of the artifact and looked down, the people below were so small that they couldn't be seen. She tried to go up again, but she couldn't because her hands touched a barrier that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. It was this barrier that had blocked her way, and it was also this barrier that had trapped her here. She tried several times but was unable to break through this barrier. Thus, she stood on this high ground and looked down at the surroundings. Because she stood at a high place, she could see far. With a glance, she could see everything here. When she saw everything clearly, her expression couldn't help but change slightly. Is this the masterpiece of the four great immortal emperors? With the strength of an immortal emperor, could it be that they could move mountains and seas and set up a prison? She muttered softly. She was shocked, emotional, and excited. The scene in front of her was something she had never seen before. Looking around, she saw 8 mountains surrounding a region filled with clouds and mist. It was very spectacular, and this region was where she was now. Even from such a high place, she could only see the region around the 8 mountains. Behind the 8 mountains was a vast expanse of white. This place was indeed as the demonic cultivator had said. It was a place that was isolated and divided. However, upon closer inspection, one would be able to see that this place was an enormous formation. The formation was divided into 8 mountain peaks, and a grand formation was set up. A place like this, was clearly a region floating in the sky. Her heart trembled, and her eyes widened. Her blood began to boil as she carefully memorized the layout of the area. Then she took a deep breath and slowly exhaled, suppressing the excitement in her heart. Chapter 2263. The cultivators below did not know what Fingzhou was thinking, nor did they know what she saw above. However, everyone saw that the figure had risen extremely high into the sky. However, the scene of the figure being pressed down did not appear, and they could not help but feel puzzled. Why did that cultivator go up and not be pressed down by the restriction? Could it be that the restriction in the sky has been removed? Many cultivators muttered softly. Looking at the figure standing in the sky, many people below were slightly moved. Thinking about it, if that cultivator could reach the top, then with their strength and cultivation, they should be able to reach the top as well. After so long, they hadn't been able to clearly see the surroundings of the area they were in. Now that that cultivator had taken the lead, they could give it a try. I want to go up and see. Who dares to go with me? A demonic cultivator stood up and looked at the cultivators sitting around him. Hearing this, those people glanced at him and could not help but fall silent. They did not want to cause trouble, so no one answered the demonic cultivator. Pfft. Since no one dares, I'll go up myself. Seeing that no one dared to stand up, the demonic cultivator immediately looked at the figure in the sky. If that person was fine, he would naturally be fine too. Furthermore, they all knew that this place had been set up with a formation and a barrier. If they wanted to leave, they might have to break the formation and the barrier to escape this place. If they went up to the sky, they might be able to obtain unexpected gains. Therefore, he threw out his flying sword and rode it towards the sky. The people below watched as the demonic cultivator rode his flying sword straight up. Not long after, he was high up in the sky. However, looking at the distance, he seemed to be much lower than the figure in the sky. Moreover, his figure stopped high up in the sky and could not go any further. It seems that he can't go up either. That's his limit. Someone said as he looked at the figure that was trying to fly up again. At this time, he was already kneeling down. He couldn't even raise his head, as if he was being pressed down by something. Then, in the instant that everyone was stunned, they saw the figure in the sky instantly fall from the sky with a whoosh. Ah! The demonic cultivator cried out in alarm. The spiritual power in his entire body was suppressed at that moment. His body felt as if it was being pressed down by a mountain, and he instantly fell from the sky and crashed heavily to the ground. When the cultivators below saw this scene, they couldn't help but be shocked. That person was originally flying up on his sword around them. Now that he fell down from above, he directly fell towards where they were. Everyone was so shocked that they instantly jumped up and retreated. Boom! Bang! There was a loud bang, and amidst the screams, it was as if a heavy object had fallen from the sky. It heavily smashed into the ground, causing the ground where they were standing to tremble slightly. Immediately after, dust and smoke filled the air, and powerful spiritual energy fluctuations rippled out from the surroundings. The dust and smoke blocked everyone's line of sight. Everyone held their breaths. When the dust and smoke gradually dissipated, they saw a hole that was several meters wide, about 10 meters in front of them. Chapter 22:64. However, at this moment, the demonic cultivator was lying there motionlessly. There was no sign of life on his body. His spirit force was suppressed. After falling from such a high place, his bones were broken and his flesh was mangled. Only his eyes were filled with fear. Even in death, he was still unable to close his eyes. Seeing the demonic cultivator at the peak of the fairy realm die like this, the surrounding people had different expressions. They couldn't help but look up at the figure in the sky who hadn't come down yet. At this moment, Fengjiu was about to come down. Because she heard the sound, she went to look in that direction. Previously, when that person flew up on his sword, she had noticed it. However, she didn't expect that the other party would only reach such a height before being forcibly suppressed. Thinking of the restriction here, her eyes moved slightly. It seemed that if one didn't have powerful spiritual energy and the pressure of an ancient divine beast like her, they wouldn't be able to reach such a height. However, this was also good. The others couldn't see the layout of this area. She withdrew her gaze and came down from the sky. When the people below saw the person coming down, some of them rushed in that direction. Anyone could see that something was wrong. That person wasn't suppressed by the restriction when he went up. It was obvious that there was something extraordinary about him. Why don't they go over and ask if he saw anything different when he went up? However, when Fengjiu came down from the sky and felt that there was no one around, she flashed into the space. When those cultivators rushed over, they couldn't find any trace of Fengjiu. In the space, Fengjiu recalled the layout of this area and drew it. After a long time, she held the diagram and looked at it. This is a great restrictive formation that combines a spirit barrier and a formation. Then, as long as she can break it, the restrictive formation here will also disappear. She softly murmured. She took the blueprint and looked at it, then finally put it away. Right now, in addition to breaking the restriction, it was also very important to increase her strength. Compared to the others here, her advantage was that she had the space. The restriction outside didn't have any effect in this space. Since this was the case, she could increase her strength here first. If she increased her strength, she might be able to break the seal on her spiritual energy. At that time, if she wanted to break the restriction, she would need the help of spiritual energy. After making up her mind, she sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate here. At the same time, due to the fact that two cultivators had flown into the sky at the same time, one of them had remained in the sky for a long time before slowly descending, while the other was forcefully suppressed by a restriction halfway up. With this comparison, it became even more obvious that this matter was unusual, and because of this, the news quickly spread. When the demonic cultivator in Black Mountain City heard this, he smiled playfully. Is this true? He hugged a plump woman beside him and stared at the demonic cultivator who reported this matter. Master, it's true. The news has already spread. I think the other experts who have their own territories will also receive the news soon. The devil cultivator below said, many people saw this. It can't be fake. Chapter 2265. Didn't I order you to search for her? What? You still haven't found her? Hearing this, the demonic cultivator quickly lowered his head and said, "Forgive us, Master. We sent out 2 teams to search outside, but there was no news of the woman in red. However, we found some cultivators who had seen her before. According to their understanding, she didn't have the slightest bit of aura. Moreover, wherever she went, the air around her became colder, as if she was being chased by a ghost." Speaking of this, the demonic cultivator paused for a moment before continuing. It's because of this that those cultivators didn't dare to make a move against her. However, other than that one time when she appeared, no one has seen her before. Therefore, your subordinates are guessing that she might be. What might she be? The demonic cultivator in the main seat narrowed his eyes and asked. Your subordinates are guessing that the woman in red might be a ghost in red. After saying this, the demonic cultivator stopped and didn't dare to continue. Hearing this, the demonic cultivator in the main seat couldn't help but pause for a moment. He looked at the demonic cultivator below and said, "Let's put this matter aside for now. Go find the man with the scar on his face and bring him back after you find him. I'm curious, how did he manage to get so high up in the sky?" "Yes." The demonic cultivator replied and left. Several other places also received the same news. Therefore, out of surprise and doubt, they also sent people to search for the man with the scar on his face. They wanted to bring him back and ask him what was so special about him. However, while everyone in this area began to search for Fingzhou and set off a frenzy, Fingzhou was cultivating in the space and was completely unaware of what was happening outside, on the other side, 100 Rivers City, Heavenly Pill Building. When Fingzhou's news of his safety reached the Heavenly Pill Building, Guan Shilin and Nemo Chen were sitting in the backyard of the Heavenly Pill Building and discussing matters. After receiving the news, Leng Hua brought the news to the backyard and handed it to Guan Shilin. "This is the news that Master sent back from the Tianyuan Palace branch in Luha City." Hearing this, Guan Shilin glanced at Imo Chen and took the letter. After removing the watermark on it, he opened it and saw the words written on it. Guan Shilin smiled and handed the letter to Imo Chen at the same time, saying to them, "This is the letter that Xiao Jiu sent back to tell us that she's safe and sound. She told us that she's fine and is on her way back." Hearing this, Leng Hua also smiled. "It's good that she's fine. I'm going to tell everyone so that they won't worry." Guan Shilin smiled as he watched Leng Hua nod and leave. He then looked at Imo Chen and saw that Imo Chen was holding the letter with a pensive look on his face. He didn't know what Imo Chen was thinking about. "What's wrong? Is there something wrong?" Imo Chen raised his eyes and glanced at him. He shook his head and handed the letter back to him. "I can't put my finger on it. I just find it strange." "What's strange?" Guan Shilin asked. Chapter 2266. Hearing this, Guan Shilin also felt that it made sense. If she wanted to come back, wouldn't it be faster and more convenient to use the Aurora transmission scroll? However, she didn't use it and chose to fly back. Could it be that something happened to her? Maybe she just has some things to deal with. Guan Shilin said. He felt that since she could escape from the demon cultivator, there shouldn't be any big problems. Maybe she encountered something on the way, so she didn't choose to use the Aurora transmission scroll. Maybe. However, she's the star of the Phoenix, so she's also a person blessed by the heavens. She has great luck, so naturally, she'll have more disasters than ordinary people. Imo Chen sighed softly. I should have followed her closely, but I didn't expect that after coming here, I wouldn't be able to see her for a few days. Don't worry, she'll be fine, Guan Shilin said. It wasn't clear if he was comforting Imo Chen or himself. After 3 days, Duan Yi finally arrived at the Heavenly Pill Dispensary in 100 Rivers City. He entered and looked around the first floor of the Heavenly Pill Dispensary. Looking at the pills placed on the first floor, his eyes flashed slightly. In such a place, there were so many high-grade medicinal pills. Only Feng Zhou could do this. This place was filled with her aura from the inside out. Whether it was the rules written on the walls of the heavenly pill dispensary, the people who received her here, or the pills placed in the cabinets, they all had her unique style. Young Master Duan. Leng Hua looked at the person who came and was slightly surprised. Duan Yi glanced at him and nodded. I have something to tell you. Hearing this, Leng Hua looked at him and said, Please come with me. He took him to the backyard and asked someone to invite Guan Shilin over. After serving him tea, Leng Hua asked, Weren't you with my master? Why did I only see you? Where's my master? Later, Guan Shilin asked someone to ask the people in Luhe City and found out that Duan Yi was by his master's side at that time. However, he didn't expect Duan Yi to come at this time and come alone. Leng Hua, is Xiao Jiu back? Guan Shilin's voice could be heard even before he arrived. He strode in from outside. As soon as he entered the courtyard, he saw Duan Yi, who was sitting in the middle of the courtyard, looking around but not seeing Feng Zhou. He couldn't help but be slightly surprised. Is Xiao Jiu back? Duan Yi stood up and bowed slightly to Guan Shilin before saying, Something happened to her and she can't come back. Upon hearing this, Guan Shilin's expression changed. He strode forward and put his hands on Duan Yi's shoulders. Something happened to Xiao Jiu. What happened? Why couldn't he come back? What's going on? Due to Guan Shilin's strength, Duan Yi's shoulders hurt, but he didn't shout or scream. He just looked at them with a face full of guilt. It's all because of me. Leng Hua noticed that Duan Yi's expression wasn't quite right. He also saw Guan Shilin's strong grip on his shoulders. Only then did he step forward and say to Guan Shilin, Don't be anxious. Let him go and let him speak in detail. Hearing this, Guan Shilin took a deep breath and let go of Duan Yi. Seeing that Duan Yi's expression wasn't very good, he said, Sorry, I forgot myself. He paused, looked at him and asked, Are you injured? Chapter 2267. Guan Shilin and Leng Hua glanced at each other, then walked up to him. One of them sat down while the other stood. What do you think happened to Xiao Jiu? Guan Shilin asked in a deep voice. Could it be that Imochen was right? Did Xiao Jiu encounter some kind of disaster again? We met Shueluo, one of the 10 great demons under the Demon Lord's command in Luhe City. Duan Yi told them everything in detail. Finally, he said, because of this, she was sucked into the door of darkness. Shueluo was killed by the immortal sovereigns of the major immortal sects who arrived later. I asked the immortal sovereigns, but they knew very little about the door of darkness. That's why I rushed over to tell you about it. I want to discuss it with you and see if you have any ideas. The two of them fell into deep thought when they heard that. They were not from the upper reaches of the continent, so they did not know much about the matters here, let alone the matter of the door of darkness. When they heard Duan Yi's words, they only knew that the situation was very serious, but there was nothing they could do. How about this? You stay here and heal your injuries. I'll go find Imo Qin. He's the disciple of Tianji Elder. I think he should know about the door of darkness. Perhaps he'll have some ideas. Guan Shilin stood up and said. Hearing this, Duan Yi nodded, that's the only thing we can do. Leng Hua, he's injured. Have Fan Lin take a look at him and see what kind of pill he needs to take. Take it from the building and give it to him. Guan Shilin instructed. Okay, I understand. Leng Hua nodded. After watching him leave the courtyard, he said, Young Master Duan, please take a seat. I'll call Fan Lin over. No need to trouble yourself. My internal injuries will heal in a few days. Duan Yi said, then continued, back then, Feng Zhou gave me a lot of pills, and when I came over, I had already consumed the inner core. After Fan Lin looks at you, if he says you don't need to use it, then don't use it. If your internal injuries haven't healed, then it won't be too late to take another pill, Lang Hua said, then said to him, sit down, I'll be right back. He walked forward, and before long, he brought Fan Lin over to take Duanya's pulse. On the other side, Guan Shilin left the Heavenly Pill building and headed towards Nalan Manor. He was led to Mo Chen's courtyard by a servant. As soon as he saw Mo Chen, before he could speak, Mo Chen asked, "But what happened?" Hearing this, Guan Shilin strode to the stone table in the courtyard and sat down. He glanced at him and said, "Your mouth is really accurate. You were right, something happened to Xiao Zhou." Hearing this, Mo Chen was not surprised. He walked slowly with his hands behind his back, sat down at the table, and asked, "What happened? Where is she now? How did you get the news?" It was in Luhe City. She and Duan Yi met Shui Luo, one of the top 10 demonic cultivators, in the city lord's mansion. They were sucked into the door of darkness opened by Shui Luo, and now we don't know where they are. Guan Shilin said angrily and asked, "What's going on with this door of darkness? Where will they be sent to after being sucked in? Why did Duan Yi say that even the senior immortal of the immortal sect doesn't know where the door of darkness leads to? Do you know?" Chapter 2268. So we'll just leave her be. What if something happens that she can't solve herself? Guan Shilin said worriedly. Mo Chen smiled gently. Compared to this, I think it's more important for you to help her guard the Heavenly Pill building. Otherwise, if the news of her being sucked into the door of darkness spreads, someone will harm the Heavenly Pill building. Humph. Who dares to have designs on the Heavenly Pill building? If one comes, I'll kill one. If two come, I'll kill two. He snorted coldly. His voice was sonorous and powerful, and his eyes were sharp and contained a murderous aura. Seeing this, Mo Chen smiled and said, "Since the people from the 4 major immortal sects already know that she's the Phoenix Star, you don't have to worry about her being sucked into the door of darkness. The people from the sects will think of a way. You should go back first. Appease her subordinates and tell them not to worry. When the time comes, she'll naturally return." "If that's the case, I'll go back first." Guan Shilin stood up and saluted him before taking his leave. After the people from the 4 major immortal sects heard the news, they gathered at the Huaxian sect to discuss. Feng Zhou, who did not know what was happening here, was cultivating in that space. As time passed, more than half a month had passed, but she was unable to break through the threshold of the realm. In the space, she opened her eyes and exhaled lightly. Her eyebrows were slightly knitted. "I'm missing an opportunity. It seems that I have to go outside." With her current strength at the peak of the Black Martial God realm, it would be difficult for her to advance further, especially since the spiritual power in her body was still sealed and could not complement each other. Thus, she could only look for an opportunity to advance. Therefore, she stood up and looked at her current appearance. Finally, she thought about it and changed her makeup. Many cultivators had seen the heavenly imperial equipment when it was high up in the sky. In addition, there was the scene of the devil cultivator being suppressed by the restriction. She estimated that if she went out with this appearance, she would definitely be targeted by those people. Since that was the case, she would change her makeup again. Anyway, to her, changing her appearance was just a matter of moving her hands and feet. After changing her appearance, it would save her a lot of trouble. Why not? Immediately, she began to fiddle with it. This time, she used her usual appearance when she was outside. He couldn't be said to be the most outstanding, but he was delicate and handsome. Coupled with his green robes, he looked somewhat cultured and refined. He was somewhat different from those people who were filled with murderous intent. If this person is outstanding, he can't hide it even if he wants to. She looked at the green figure reflected in the spring water, looked at the handsome face of the young man, and chuckled. Who asked me to have such an elegant demeanor? My bearing is out of the ordinary. So be it. It's also pleasing to the eye. She muttered to herself with a hint of a smile and smugness in her voice. If someone familiar with her was by her side, they would definitely say that she was overly narcissistic. She used her divine sense to check the surroundings. Seeing that the surroundings were very peaceful and there were no cultivators around, she flashed out of the space. She flicked her green clothes and brushed her sleeves. Only then did she walk forward in a relaxed and happy mood, humming a little tune. Chapter 2269. However, this place was filled with devil cultivators and evil people. If she were to break the barrier and the formation one day, how would she deal with the people here? Thinking of this, she fell into deep thought. It seemed like she had to reorganize everyone here before breaking the barrier. Right now, the most important thing was to increase her strength. Only when she was strong enough would she be able to suppress the people here. Should she kill them or keep them alive? It would all be decided by her strength. Then let's build a team first. Compared to those devil cultivators and evil cultivators, those ferocious cultivators still have their merits, she murmured as she walked towards the place where the rogue cultivators often appeared. She wanted to build a team of cultivators, a team that could deal with the devil cultivators and evil cultivators here. And these people could be found among the rogue cultivators here. She took out a fruit from the space and ate it. As she walked into the forest, she released her divine sense and paid attention to the movements around her. When she arrived in the forest, she could still see some devil cultivators sitting together. There were also some cultivators sitting around. These people were quietly sizing her up when she appeared. Her gaze swept past those devil cultivators and evil cultivators. Her gaze lingered on those cultivators. With a sweep of her divine sense, she could clearly see their strength and cultivation base. There were 13 cultivators here and more than a dozen devil cultivators and evil cultivators. All of them were sitting around. Putting aside the devil cultivators for the time being, she roughly glanced at those cultivators. The weakest among them was at the peak of the nascent soul realm. Among them, most of them were at the fairy realm. There were also 3 or 4 who were at the peak of the fairy realm and one who was at the intermediate level of the celestial sage realm. She looked at the cultivator at the intermediate level of the celestial sage realm. He was a middle-aged man. His clothes were tattered and torn in several places. His hair was not tied up neatly. A few strands of hair were scattered messily. Perhaps he noticed that she was sizing him up. He raised his eyes and looked at her. His gaze was sharp and terrifying. His eyes were filled with bloodthirsty killing intent. The murderous aura around him also spread out. Seeing this, her eyes flashed slightly. This person's strength was not bad. He would be a great help if she could recruit him. However, he was a cultivator at the intermediate level of the celestial sage realm. Such strength was already considered very strong in this place. It would not be easy to recruit him. According to the devil cultivator who had revealed the information to her, the rogue cultivators here were unwilling to be bound, unwilling to acknowledge a master and be controlled. Since that was the case, if she wanted to recruit them, she had to convince them or have a reason for them to follow her willingly. She retracted her gaze. With a tap of her toes, she leaped onto a tree to rest. She did not care about the probing eyes on her. The surrounding rogue cultivators were all sizing up Phone 9. They saw that the man was dressed in a green robe. He was extremely clean, and he didn't look very old. They were very surprised to see such a person suddenly appear here.